Thank you for tuning in to the Interactive Indies podcast. We have a special episode today. We have a bunch of wonderful guests, and we're going to be discussing video games, different aspects, what we like about them, and kind of use our perspective in game devs to talk about the games that we enjoy and the genres and different things like that. So I'm going to be the host, I suppose. Daniel. My name's Daniel Voth. And we have Matt Woelk.
Hey everyone.
It rhymes with elk.
Thank you, yes.
I don't know, I really like that. Rebecca Harrison.
Yeah. Hello.
Julian Butuel.
Hey you guys. Hey everyone.
And Albertine Watson.
Hello.
Cool. So we probably just, maybe what we can start with first is, for people that maybe aren't familiar with everyone around the table, we can just maybe say a little bit, like, I know you're working on a video game Propaganda Llama, you go to the Game Collective meetups, you go to a lot of the game jams. Outside of that, like, what would most people kind of know about you?
Oh, what should people know? I do improv with the Neighborhood Watch Improv. We were in Fringe this last summer and it was phenomenal. What else? I play lots of instruments. I play guitar and trumpet. Those are the two I played today. I love board games. I'm part of Games Explained. We have a YouTube channel and a competing podcast.
I'm going to take you down.
Yeah, that's a bit about me.
And Rebecca, and it's interesting, everyone that's around the table now, I have also talked to sort of one-on-one, so you could also listen to those to learn about all the people around the table here. You previously worked at Tangent Animation. There's some exciting stuff that you're involved in now. Can you tell people a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so what I worked on in film at Tangent is out now on Netflix. Next Gen, check it out. And now I'm working for a studio called Gallium Studios, which is out of San Francisco. It's being run by Lauren Elliott, the guy who did Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, and Will Wright, who did The Sims. And they're making this really cool new app called Proxy, which is basically an artificial intelligence that lives in your phone, and you can kind of just chat to it and be friends with it, and it'll build this little world out of the memories that you give it, and that's pretty much the game so far, and it's looking really cool. But yeah, that's my life. Also, I'm married now, which is exciting. That was not the case last time.
I had to remind myself, Harrison, not Kramer.
Yeah.
I actually renamed a lot of this stuff, like my files on my Google Drive. I mean, it doesn't mean like I could have just left it, but I don't know. I just thought it was.
It's romantic.
Yeah, exactly. Julian, which is interesting because you were the first person that I ever sat down to talk with, and you're kind of like the OG of at least my podcast stuff, and that was almost a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah. So I think everyone knows that you do a lot of audio at game jams and stuff. Outside of that, what do people what would people know?
So I'm originally trained as a jazz musician. I went to music school for jazz trumpet. So I also improvise, but in musical context. I grew up playing classical piano, and then slowly inched my way towards film composing and ultimately kind of game audio stuff, which is what I'm trying to do more of now. And then I keep busy playing in indie rock bands, doing some trumpet stuff here and there, and doing freelance composing and audio.
That's super cool.
And Julian, I feel like it's also worth mentioning that you recently did an incredible Petrakucha presentation.
Oh, yeah.
At Petrakucha Winnipeg. And it's like, people really seem to like it, and they chose it as the Petrakucha presentation of the day recently. So people should look that up about you.
Petrakucha Winnipeg, check it out. Lots of great talks by lots of local amazing people.
Yeah. I feel like, and Albertine, I feel like you have a lot of like cool stuff, changes in your life. A lot of people would know you through some of the complex stuff, but what are you doing these days, and what kind of new exciting things are you working on?
Yeah. So I'm really new to the game dev and game jam scene as of like a month, not even quite a month. I used to work in communications. I worked at a place called Complex Games for 4 years, just shy of 4 years, and then I did comm stuff for a games PR agency called Evolve PR, and I had some really cool clients there. And then, just recently I've kind of joined up with Alakaloka of Infinite Ammo, and we're making some games.
That's cool.
Anything you can talk about?
No.
Okay.
Everything has like code names.
Shut down.
Sorry.
I like the code names. Project Potato is the one that I always see on Twitter a lot.
I'm cheering for Project Potato.
Can that be the final
Go
game name,
Potato.
please?
Oh my
I would buy the
goodness.
heck out of that.
Well,
One of the project names needs to stay as the final one.
okay, that's a good point. Maybe there could be like an Easter egg or something.
Yeah, there you
Because
go.
right now I don't think there's any potatoes in the game.
Oh.
I don't know how they came up with that name. I've said too much. I cannot say anything else.
You heard it here first.
So I think what I wanted to jump into right away was like kind of our like favorite video games and what we like about them. So we'll start with Matt. What game? Actually, you know what? I'm going to take it even further back than that before we get into that. Our first introductions into games. So, for example, like my intro into games was growing up with my brother. I don't know if we have the shared experience of GoldenEye playing like multiplayer with your like older brother, older sister, your siblings. But that was like the launching board for me. So I don't know if anyone can share their initial foray into games.
Jeez. So I was the oldest sibling, so I was the one in charge of the system. So you're all like, yeah, my older brother let me like pretend to play Mario with an unplugged controller. I was that person. I gave them the unplugged controller. No, I never played GoldenEye because like I don't know, it just didn't feel up my alley. But like definitely back on the N64, Pokemon days, you
Right.
know, just Mario 64. Jeez. Those are the days.
How about you, Matt?
Oh, my first system was a Game Boy with no like postfix, just Game Boy, and I had Super Mario Land or something, and the sequel. And those games are special to me because I have never heard anyone talk about them, favorably or otherwise. It's like this
Super
Mario
Land?
Yeah, it's just the Game Boy one. It's like it exists only in my mind, but it is also on Wikipedia. And so that one's special
It is
because
real.
it was a handheld system, and so like my sister would be at swimming lessons, and I would just be playing Mario because I wasn't swimming.
And to this day, you still cannot swim.
No, I swim. The lessons were at different times.
Did
your
you share
secret
this? Like,
weakness.
I noticed that game sounds familiar to you as well.
Matt, I'm here to tell you that game exists.
Ah!
It exists because, further to Dan's story, I had the older brother who was generous enough to convince my parents to like buy a Super Nintendo when it came out. And what came with the Super Nintendo was Super Mario World.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with like that particular like overworld and that level structure. So then when I encountered a Game Boy for the first time, it was like Super Mario Land, and everything was like bizarro.
It's so strange. Like Super Mario 2 is the weird one, and this one is even stranger.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, what is this topsy-turvy world? And the Link's Awakening Zelda game for Game Boy is also kind of like spacey and weird. So I have associations of the Game Boy as being like not Super Nintendo.
It does exist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is.
I'm not familiar with this game
This
whatsoever.
is what it looks like. It's so few pixels and so few tones.
I'm here to tell you, Matt and Julian, that this game does not exist.
The internet thinks differently.
And the cover art is just like, what?
Yeah, it's really weird.
These
It's
are
funny
not
how like
similar.
the games from like back in the day, they had these cover art that doesn't like translate to the game whatsoever in any perspective.
Like it's a hook for your imagination. You're like, this is what the world looks like, and the game that I'm seeing is like the version of the world that I can see from this world.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can imagine that it is how it looks on the cover, but you're just not given access to it.
Also, Mario's so angry in every like modern photo.
His
He's
butt's
just
getting set on fire.
well.
Yeah, he's got furrowed
Poor guy.
brows. He's not the friendly plumber we know today. Yeah, I also have a sibling story from getting introduced to games, so in kind of a weird way. So my timing on like the actual year that this happened and the age this happened to me is really fuzzy, I think. But I know that I wasn't interested in games when I was really little because I didn't know anything about them. And then I think my sister asked for a PlayStation for Christmas, which surprises me now, given that she's not really interested in games very much at all. But somehow she heard about it and asked for one. And somehow my parents managed to get that for us, which looking back, I have no idea how they were able to pull that off. I wasn't allowed to touch it until Boxing Day, I guess. So Christmas Day, I wasn't allowed to play. It was her thing only. And then as Boxing Day came around, we were still playing together, but I really latched onto it. I had no idea what this thing was, and then I played it and I was like, this is amazing. There's like worlds in here. And slowly she kind of, I think just like, I was really obsessive about it, and she slowly was just like, well, okay, that's your thing, I guess. And just kind of laying back.
Move along.
Yeah, so yeah, my games started with the PlayStation, and I think our first game that we owned was something called Porsche Boxster Racing, or Porsche Boxster Racing. Yeah, and it was just like a Porsche racing game.
Nice.
Because my sister really liked fast cars, and so my dad was like, "This is your first PlayStation game," and then after that came like the Crash Bandicoots and Spyros.
Nice.
All them good things.
I used to play a lot of Crash Bandicoot on the PS2. I have a lot of good memories from those games. Although it's been such a long time that I haven't. I should really go back and play that. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I almost don't want to taint those good memories.
Don't
Because
do it.
now
Don't do it.
I look at like old Crash Bandicoot stuff and I'm like, wow, I was really into that, huh? That's a whole can of worms.
I saw that the remastered version of Crash Bandicoot apparently was received like very, very well. I don't know if it was a
think so.
remaster or if they remade it. Or
They
what it
totally
was.
remade it. Yeah, it's completely remade. I haven't played it, but I think a ton of work went into it, and I think it's like punishingly difficult.
Yeah, I heard it was vicious.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would I want this?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. I want to try it, but at the same time, like Matt was sort of suggesting, maybe I should just leave those memories in the past.
Well, it's tough because you'll find someone playing it in high resolution, but it's the old game.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like how it looks on those old blurry TVs.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
so it's like analyzing your childhood with a magnifying glass.
Which you should never do.
Is there any other like old school games that when we're growing up, there's like the Crash Bandicoots, or like for myself there was Jack and Daxter was like a big one. Every year during Extra Life, I always try and marathon through like Jack 1, 2, and 3. My favorite part is, I think it's in Jack 3 when you can get to like the skateboarding section, and you can get in the city, and then you can like take cars, and it's kind of like a GTA aspect to it, which is weird for like a Jack and Daxter game. So I always really enjoyed that game.
Who did Jack and Daxter? Because I'm remembering other games around
Naughty
that
Dog,
era that also had skateboarding segments.
It was
Like-
like, a
Like
hover- it was like a
Spyro?
hoverboard.
Yes, I was just
Oh,
thinking
yeah.
Spyro had a skateboarding segment,
Did it?
and why?
Because it was the 90s.
Like, we're gonna put a dragon on a skateboard, and you're gonna like it.
Yes, you will.
You seen all that Tony Hawk money? Put a skateboard in it. Put a skateboard on it.
Spyro just
That's
manuals
why.
through a level.
So we'll go back to the question that I had initially brought up earlier was, what is, if you could like pick your favorite game, maybe particularly that kind of influences maybe your game dev side, what game would that be? I don't know if you can start.
Oh, that's a big question. Well, I'm a sucker for story and mood. So if you can capture those two things and have it have a sense of humor, I'm yours. So like I'm wearing an Undertale shirt right now, which is a dead giveaway. But like that's been a big influence recently on like just trying to create games with a purpose. Like don't just go in blind almost. Be like, what do I want to say before I begin? and then design from there. It's like it was Undertale it's basically an old-fashioned style mother type game where it's
Mother type.
well what's
I don't know.
what's the name? It's
Like
got Ness in it.
Earthbound?
Earthbound, there it is. Sorry, yeah, Earthbound type game. It's an RPG, and you have encounters with monsters. But instead of fighting them, you're given the option to like make friends with them, which is the biggest deal for me because that's always been something I wanted to do as a kid. It was like, why do we have to be fighting all the time? We can just be friends. And so like the point is that the creator Toby Fox set out to create a game about that moral exploration, and then created the framework of the game around that. And so that's something that I've been thinking a lot about before I begin lately. So yeah.
I know I really appreciate a lot of the things you mentioned in games. I think a good example for me is, and I talked about it in my Pechakucha talk, Journey, and it's very, I don't know how to describe it, subtle in how it conveys emotion, and you can kind of perceive it based on your perspective. I don't know, it's kind of a really ambiguous feeling that I have towards that game. And I believe I had sent out like a sort of question thing before recording, and I know at least the common thread seemed to be that everyone sort of appreciates the story in games and some of that. So I don't know if you can sort of speak on that, Julian?
Yeah, we'll kind of expand on it. What I find interesting about games is that the players are controlling the sequence of events and the action, as opposed to like in a film or a book or other traditional or other forms of entertainment, where it's like start at the beginning, go to the end in a very linear fashion. I like the ability for the player to craft their own story and narrative within it. So I like these big kind of like epic worlds. I'm like a sucker for like fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, whatever, like these giant universes. So I like the big, even like story-driven games like Final Fantasy or like, I don't know, something like a big universe like Zelda is a recent example of something that I just like dove in and like ate it all up. But yeah, I like that while there's a structure for me to explore what the creators had intended me to get out of it, I can also have agency and kind of craft my own experience within that by focusing on certain elements of it and or following the guided instructions. So as an audio person, I appreciate all the like music and sound tricks that you can do to like encourage the player to have their own experience by using music, different things fade in or fade out, and sound can go a long way to enhancing that.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's interesting how I feel like my answers to this question are continuously changing year after year and decade after decade. And I feel like if you'd asked me when I was a kid, like, oh, it seems like you really want to work in games. Like, why do you want to do that? Or what inspires you? I would have said, you were talking about your company that you're working at, and which is run by, you said Will Wright? Or owned by Will Wright? And I hugely looked up to Will Wright as a kid because I loved The Sims. And the only reason I ever got and played The Sims is because I used to go to Walmart with my mom when she was shopping, and I'd go to the game section and just look at all the games while she shopped.
And they had like the big thing of Sims.
Yeah, and back then PC games were sold in like almost like the size of a cereal box, and the packaging would have like a gatefold that you could open, and there's just so much like advertising art on there, and it was incredible. And I picked up the Sims one because I had no idea what that was, but I'd heard of like Sim City and stuff like that before from friends, and it had a little kind of like decal or label on the cover that said fastest selling PC game of all time or highest selling PC game of all time. It had something like that on it, and at the time it was. And I remember thinking like, well, it's got to be good, I guess. And I got it home, and I'd never seen or heard anything like that before, and I was really fascinated by Will Wright, and I was really fascinated by this creation, and it really attracted a lot of like female gamers, and I was like, and the business of that was shocking to me because it was unlike anything else I'd experienced. But now, in terms of the things that inspire me and stuff, it's really informed by like a lot of the incredible things that are happening in indie games and the constant like never-ending challenges to the medium. And it's pretty cliche to say because I work with infinite ammo now, but I think my most recent thing that like is super inspiring is like Night in the Woods, and it just, in terms of narrative, it like wrapped my heart up so intensely.
Yeah, because like what you were just saying about how The Sims, I feel like a really big part of why it was so popular is because it's so relatable.
Right.
And I don't know did anybody here go to that talk that the publishers Finji did here?
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
was there.
And they're like, all you need to do to enjoy Night in the Woods. It's awesome that you're working with them, by the way. That's super cool. All you have to do is have been bored and a person at some point in your life. Which is the same feel that The Sims has, like, but maybe also a bit sadistic. But it's like, like that's definitely a huge deal to like be relatable as a game. Like,
totally. And that's the thing, is it's interesting because like now I can look back at The Sims and see that relatableness, and I still play The Sims 4 now because it's like my house building simulator. I don't even do the relationship stuff. I'm just like, let me build mansions, and that's all I want to do. And but you know, back then I think when I was a child, I was really motivated by mechanics, and I was really excited by and interested by mechanics because I think there was so much new that could be done in the way of mechanics in like the 90s when I was growing up with games. And I think there still is new stuff that can be done with mechanics in games, but I'm seeing a lot more experimentation with like art and sound and narrative, and that's why stuff like, you know, Night in the Woods and even like much more recently Wandersong are like super inspiring in the way they tell their stories.
What can you tell me a little bit about Wandersong?
Yeah.
Because I've seen it all over Twitter, and partly due to through your Twitter.
I talk about it.
Please, no spoilers. No spoilers.
I won't spoil anything.
Okay.
It's this like I see it. It's one of these games that I've seen. And by the way, as a quick side, I still haven't seen whatever the movie is with Thanos that everyone was raving about.
Okay, yes. So I won't spoil that either.
But can you tell me about Wandersong?
Yeah, so Wandersong is a really charming indie game made by Greg Lebanov. I can't remember his Twitter handle off the top of my head, but if you search, you will find it. But yeah, it's made by Greg Lebanov, and you play as this character who basically interacts with his world by singing. He is a bard, or they are a bard, and you have to solve all kinds of puzzles and problems in this world that you find yourself in by singing, and we have some images up on our screen here so we can see sort of what it looks like. And you have kind of with your right joystick, you can pop up this little circular window that indicates all the different notes you can sing, and so the entire game is informed by this singing mechanic, and you would think that might get old quickly, but it doesn't, because the actual gameplay, apart from this singing, radial pop-up menu mechanic, changes constantly. And so sometimes it's a platformer, sometimes it's only doing story stuff, sometimes it gets really super Meat Boy-ish in terms of intensity. It's just this super charming little game with this incredible soundtrack. And it makes me feel a lot of the same things I was feeling when I was playing Night in the Woods. So I love it, and you should all play it.
Okay. Sold.
I wanted to follow up on something that you guys had spoken about with regards to The Sims, and how you just want to like build your like mansion. I wanted to do that in Age of Empires.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone shares that experience where I would get annoyed when they would attack me because I hadn't built my empire the way that I wanted it built. So I'd always get annoyed and be like, I can beat the game and I've done everything the game wants me to do, so the game is saying, okay, we're moving forward, you don't need to build all this stuff. I'd be like, no, but I need to have my like fishery, I need to have my farms, I need them to be big.
That's an interesting feature of a lot of games that allow you to either directly build or influence the world that you're building. So like The Sims is like, you have all the control, like you are God in this game, right? And then in Age of Empires, which I haven't played, but you're building this empire, this world, this civilization. And then I'm thinking of even something like Animal Crossing, where you can, like in the most recent iterations of it, you can influence, what people move to your town, but you cannot influence where they move. So you might have your town beautifully designed, and then a new resident plunks their house right in the middle of your pathway. And it's funny, there's always something that comes in, and even in The Sims, like you might have burglars or fire or like a cockroach cockroach infestation. Like all kinds of things can come to wreak havoc with your perfect little kingdom that you've created, which is kind of funny.
Another thing that I wanted to like ask everyone about was your favorite or our favorite most obscure games that most people generally haven't heard of. So I don't know if there's any game for you, Matt,
Oh yes.
that fits this.
My favorite game whenever someone asks is the Swapper, which is a
Okay, so we're gonna have to
puzzle
pull this up.
platformer. Find an image. Also, if you can ever find the main image of the Swapper in a poster.
Is this?
Oh, that picture!
Oh, this is it?
The poster so bad. Oh yes. So the Swapper, it's a puzzle platformer, and the mechanic is you can direct where another version of you is going to be, and then when both are on screen, you control them both, and you can move your soul between them.
Wow.
Wow.
I say it that way because
How
it
many
influences
drugs you
the
have to be
story. The story is so linked with this idea of like moving your soul between versions of you, and there's an alien species that is all interconnected, but they just look like big rocks. Like you wouldn't even know unless you had like this device that you could interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And you hear their thoughts about the human and what they're going through, and it's so like.
It sounds like all the pieces like
Ooh.
mesh together really well in all the
It's-
different components of the
Yeah,
game.
it's like playing a philosophy argument.
Philosophy argument.
It's super fun.
I've never heard a game referred to as a.
It's super
in that
fun.
way.
Play the Swapper. Oh, and the art is made with like actual figurines that they photographed.
Wow.
So the whole game looks like a little spookily real.
Okay.
I love it. Play the Swapper. I've only played like 6 hours of this game. Like I beat it and never touched it again and adore it. Like there's a special place in my heart for games
Yeah.
that you can experience like a movie.
I have a game like that, but I'm curious like where you found this game. Is it like not?
It may have just been in a Humble Bundle or something. I don't know. It was years and years ago.
So it's a properly like obscure kind of game. Like not a lot of people know about it. Didn't get like a big reception when it came out.
It won some awards, but it didn't like.
Sometimes that's just the way it goes.
I don't
Sometimes.
know if it showed up on PlayStation or. But you should all play it. And listeners at home, find the Swapper. It's probably cheap.
Where can I play it?
Steam.
Nice.
Okay. It's funny. I have two obscure games. One is a Game Jam game that was made in Game Maker, and it's not even a finished game. It's just like some guy's prototype. One of my favorite games I've ever played, and it's the most simple mechanic. All it is you're a lawnmower and you're cutting grass. And that game, I played that game so much. I played hours of that game. It's just like a prototype. Like
you
it's
can just
not.
go outside and do that.
There's something I loved. Like you had to like manage your gas, and I just love the idea of this guy that made this game, knowing that I enjoyed it so much because it just seems like one of those kind of throwaway games. And then there's another game called Bottle Rockets. Rockets. I didn't spell it right. Bottle Rockets.
We're just learning how to do science now.
Bottle Rockets game. Oh, this is.
Is this
not
one of
gonna
those
come up.
IRL
See, that's one
games?
of those problems when you need to have a name for your game that is not an actual thing.
Rockets. James Earl Cox. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so in this game, this is what I like about the game that I mentioned before, and this one is they're both super simple mechanics. The lawnmower, all you're doing is cutting grass, and in this one, it's a platformer, and there's no like you can't lose this game. You're just playing the experience, and let me see if I can pull up a video, because it's hard to. I won't play the whole thing.
Are you Googling yourself?
I am, because I have a video of it, and I don't know where else there is a video of this game. So I'll just play like the first little bit. You can see all my embarrassing.
Oh, you got some Crossy Road playthrough?
Yeah. I was trying to do like a cliche like let's play of just some mobile game. I thought it was funny.
It's you with your cat on a unicycle.
Yeah. So in this game, this is all the gameplay is. Essentially you need to unlock a door by hitting a switch, and then you go back through the door. And the story is told through these like intermission sequences. And the story. What I liked about this game is the story is implied and kind of literal at the same time. That doesn't make any sense, but and it's about the relationship between I believe it's a mother and a daughter, and you're playing as the daughter. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this game, but whatever. The space station is crashing, and then the story is told through these sequences. Oh gosh, I'm doing a terrible job. Anyways.
Perhaps it has to be played to be understood.
Yeah. I don't know. Just when I get excited about stuff, sometimes I trip over my feet too much.
Well, that means it's good then.
Yeah.
It's so good, it's indescribable.
Yeah. So if I were to explain it with more clarity, it's about a relationship between two people that care about each other, and through the course of the story, you're kind of the space station's crashing into a planet, and they're kind of sharing their relationship in the past tense. So it's like, oh, I love you, I miss you towards the end of the game, and then it's kind of like this really cool emotional kind of experience that doesn't require, and this is the part I like about the game, which isn't a commentary on the gameplay specifically, but that you can convey an emotion without having this convoluted or complex system of mechanics. When you mentioned you went to the Finji talk and they said all you need to relate is
being a person.
Bored. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that people can kind of do things like Night in the Woods or this game for me, and I can kind of use those experiences to like make my own kind of obscure little game. I don't know if you have like an obscure game, Julian.
Mine's not super obscure, but did y'all ever play Psychonauts?
Oh,
Yeah.
I always wanted to. I never did.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a half-hearted explanation because it's a little fuzzy. So thank goodness we have the internet. Dan, would you be a friend and pull that up for us?
My spelling. Let's not pay any attention to the spelling.
Just before yeah. This Psychonauts.
So Tim Burton.
Yes. Hold on. Before I go on, I just want to make sure that I don't want to miscredit, or I want to make sure I credit things properly. Is it Double Fine? Yeah, Tim Schafer. Yeah. Okay, good. Anyway, you play as Raz, who's like this kid with telekinetic powers, and I believe went to telekinetic camp. And then things are not as they seem, and it turns out that the camp is just like a ploy by the evil overlords to I forget what, but you discover this conspiracy along the way, and your job is to go through the levels, but the levels you have to help the other campers, right, who are like frightened or something like that, and in order to do that you have to go inside each of their minds, and the level, it's a platformer game, and each level is like a representation of their mind. So in some instances, the level might be like, there's one where it's like a board game. It's like, and you like go in and it's like Louis the 15th, it's like the French Revolution or something, and you're like playing a tabletop game. And then another one is you're like in it's like some weird village. Have you played the game?
I've never played. I know something of the premise, but like, it sounds like Kingdom Hearts almost.
Yeah, kind of. It's just
like a completely new thing now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I found it really interesting how like the story was told, or the characters were told by like the way their levels were designed. There's one, it's like the running of the bulls, and then there's like everything is super stylized in the art, and like this running of the bulls is a representation of this kid who's like freaked out about everything, and then by the end of the level you've like cured them. Anyway, it was really interesting way of storytelling or representing feelings by like the actual level.
Like character
really
development
cool.
through
Yeah,
level design.
exactly.
Hardcore.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
Go home and play it.
Yeah, check it out. Art style, amazing. Music, amazing. So yeah,
Jeez.
amazing.
One of my kind of, I mean, I would say it's a lesser known pick in that it's not commonly known in the public consciousness the way something like Fortnite is. But I mean, it did show at GDC in either 2014 or 2015. My memory is eluding me at this moment. But it's a game by Nina Freeman, who is like really well known in the indie community for making incredible stuff. And it's called How Do You Do It? I actually had to look it up to make sure I had the name correct, but it was really cute. So like my exposure to indie games, I feel like came really late in my life, and I feel like I'm still kind of just becoming aware of like the interesting people in the indie scene in the States and abroad. And it's this game quite simply about you're a little girl, I think you're like 10 or 11 maybe. Your mom steps out, I think she says she has to do some shopping or something, and you have they're the equivalent of like Barbie dolls, and you play this little girl trying to figure out how two people have intercourse, and you play this action of just kind of slowly mushing these dolls together, and she's like, I don't know what to do. Is it like hugging? Is it like naked hugging? And it's just it's so innocent and funny, and she's so anxious, and you have to try and mess around with these dolls before your mom comes home, because she comes home and she's like, what are you doing? And it's so pure, and it really just focuses on this one moment in time in I think a lot of kids' lives. I can't speak to other kids. I totally did that when I was a kid. I was like, is it like this? And it's just like this really isolated little look at like this part of childhood where you're innocent but you're trying to figure things out. And that was amazing to me that could be a game. Like I grew up playing very conventional AAA titles because there really wasn't an indie scene in the way that we know it now.
Right.
When I was growing up, and so the only things I played were blockbuster games, and it wasn't until I got older and people were like, there's this thing called indie games and you should check them out. And I was at GDC when they were showing it in either 2014 or 2015, and it just blew my mind. I was like, you can just make little games just about these little moments of your life or about childhood or adolescence, and that's really special to me, and I think everyone should play it at least once.
I appreciate like how you refer to this game, because it's that's exactly what I took out of the game that I was showing, the Bottle Rockets. It's not traditional,
right?
It maybe probably isn't super commercial, at least the one that I'm referring to. I know it wasn't super a big commercial project, but that doesn't mean that it's any less valuable.
Right,
in
totally.
what it can offer. I mean, it had an impact on me, and I know it's cheesy, but if I were to make something, if I could make an impact on at least one person, like the impact that you have on the game that you referred to, Matt, I'm not aware of it, but it's clearly you enjoy it, and
So sweet, you should all play it. It's okay. The swap art.
I'm taking notes as everyone's talking.
I know, right?
Like, oh, yes, I have some things to do when I get home.
Well, I feel like Albertine's game, the How Do You Do It, is like a cool representation of what it is about games that are different than. Like, I got a story. It's like you could read a story about like once upon a time there's a kid who's when their mom went out. But like you're the person figuring it out, because we've all been there, and whether it's with dolls or whether it's however we did it,
However we learn.
So there's something about being the pilot, and you're like, here we go again, time traveling back to this moment in time, and you're like, that's video games, that's interactive media, and you like can't get that anywhere else.
And that's the thing, it is so effective in how eerily like it recreates that embarrassing, like afraid sensation you had when you were little, and you're trying to figure that out, and you're kind of trying to hide from mom and dad that you like are curious about this stuff. And like I was embarrassed like looking at it at GDC. I was embarrassed playing, I was embarrassed asking about it. Nina Freeman was there, and at the time I didn't realize what like a superstar she was in the world of indies, and I couldn't even I was so nervous I couldn't even talk to her because the game had made me nervous, and I was just nervous in general, and I was like,
oh gosh.
But like that's how effective it is. It just like really transports you to that moment.
This is giving me war flashbacks to Beyond Two Souls by Quantic Dream. Do you know which scene I'm talking about at the party?
I haven't actually finished that game, which is
Okay.
ridiculous because it's older now.
Okay.
So I may have missed that part.
Okay, so there's so you're playing as this girl with telekinetic powers, and she's basically she's basically a freak because of this, and she's raised in like a lab, and like they try and socialize her because it makes kids normal, so they send her to a party where she knows no one, and it was just it was so relatable, and it was like these asshole kids are just like, hey, new kid, like, do you want to make out if you want to be cool? And she's like, I want to be cool. And it goes south, and, like, her emotions are just, like, toyed with by these boys. And it's just like, like, thinking about it right now in the present is painful.
Yeah,
because,
that's
like,
upsetting.
I don't know, like, that's a situation that, like, I went through as a kid where it's like, you're at a party, and you want to be cool. And then, like, people approach you, and they're like, if you want to, like, be cool, you gotta do this. And you're like, I know objectively that's a stupid thing to do, but I do want to be cool. And this game, like, how do you do it? Like, that just looking at it, and like, that is the same vibe.
So I think it's interesting that you can play these like little obscure games, but you can also, I play so many AAA titles. So I'm curious, Matt, if you can kind of touch on any game that you've put a lot of time into outside of it being obscure and maybe having it be this narrative kind of butterfly.
So narratives and like a story experience and a mood are something I'm really drawn to in games, but I'm also drawn to having some sort of like reflex mechanic that I can master and then just prove mastery over it.
Right.
Like, I'll go play an old game just because I know I'm already good at it.
Right.
And so, for me, that game, and I'm not the best at it, there's, like, professional esports, but I play Overwatch, like, daily. I'll play a little bit of Overwatch. Because they always have a new hero where they're rebalancing things, and the situation's always different because your opponents are always different, and your team is always different. Overwatch has got me tickled. And the characters, all the movement is so different. You can play a character in a first-person game where you're a ball with momentum and you roll around and smash people. And
that hamster one.
Yeah, it's
He's
the
cool.
hamster one. They're all so different. I'm enthralled daily by Overwatch. Love it.
And that's interesting because I have the same experience with Left 4 Dead 2 where I've put probably over 2,000 hours over a lifetime of having played it into that game, which is still like a lot. But I mean, the game, to be fair, that game came out a long time ago. If that makes it any better.
It's not 2,000 hours in like recent history.
But I wanted to touch on that because, let me know if you have the same experience, but I find it odd that I replay, in Left 4 Dead 2, there's only 4 levels, and then each level has a certain amount of chapters. But it doesn't get old to me. 2,000 hours of the same maps over and over and over, the same characters. They don't add, the difference between Left 4 Dead 2 and Overwatch is they're not continually adding content. Sure, you can get new levels in that, but I just play the same levels over and over and over, and the same characters over and over, and it doesn't get old for me.
Did the enemies change, or
they don't add new enemies? I mean,
but, the permutations of I haven't played it myself, so I actually have no idea.
This is nice.
So I know it's about characters fighting zombies, and there's different kinds of zombies.
To explain how the game works, it's a versus game where you have a team of 4 humans or 4 survivors versus 4 infected.
Okay.
And the infected,
and they're all player characters.
Yes, they're all player characters.
Oh, okay. This just got more interesting.
Yeah. And the infected is a little bit different in that they have a few different classes that they can choose from. There's ones that will kind of pin you down and you can't escape unless your teammate helps you. There's another one that can kind of get you by distance. So there's this perfect combination of infected classes where if you're working together, you can really kind of click really well.
Yeah.
And it's nice when you get that teamwork in that game. I play on the modded server where it's 10 versus 10, and it gets
nice.
like really chaotic, and it's so much fun, and it adds like a buy system to it, so you can buy weapons that you can't traditionally do in the vanilla game. But Left 4 Dead 2 is like my, by far, in terms of hours and just enjoyment, that's my game.
So cool.
So I don't know. Do you have the same issue where you're finding yourself playing the same maps over and
Well,
over?
I think it's like listening to the same song over and over and singing along to it. Like you just love it.
Yeah.
you
You love it. That's it.
Yeah,
You
it's
just
good
want to
from day
experience it.
one.
Yeah.
It's like you've heard it enough times that you have nostalgia, and then your brain likes going over those same networks.
Is Overwatch? Do they have a large body of levels?
They do now, yeah.
They do now, and they're continually adding content.
Oh yeah.
I'm like out of the loop when it comes to Overwatch.
Yeah.
I know it's like this juggernaut, but I know they have a bunch of like cool characters that have like personality. I've never played the game. I've seen like gameplay on Reddit here and there of like weird clips, like high level clips where a guy goes outside the level to get behind someone, and he does this cool like maneuvers. So it's kind of like do you find Overwatch a little bit kind of like chess in a way?
Oh yeah, you're playing your opponent. Like all of times where I'm playing the one character that can basically fly and shoot rockets from an incredible distance.
Yeah.
And I'll play that until the last 1 minute of the game, and then switch to a character that behaves entirely differently. Like I'll be Reinhardt with a big shield, like a melee character, just to like wreck the opponent, just to do something
Really?
unpredictable, and then you get that final push.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was a component of
I know.
Overwatch. Like,
Oh yeah, you can switch characters whenever you die, or you
Really?
can go back to spawn and switch.
Yeah.
Oh,
See,
wow.
I don't play. I had no idea. I thought you were like, because people talk about their mains, right? Like I'm a Mercy main or whatever. And I had no idea you could choose like in between, like throughout gameplay. That's amazing.
I'm seeing an interesting parallel between both of your games and
Yeah.
also my all-time like most time spent in a game,
Oh.
which is also would have been my like unknown game. It's an MMO made by a French company. It's called Wakfu. And the premise is there are 12 classes, and it's a strategy like game. So like it's almost like if Magic the Gathering were an MMO. Like there's each class has a very specific set of skills, and you have to know what every other class's like weakness and strength is, and they all have completely different play styles. And you don't get to pick between characters like mid-game, like you're stuck with yours. But like it's very, very intellectual. Like it's turn-based strategy essentially.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wait, turn-based MMO?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's actually so good.
What?
And the community is
Okay.
small enough. Yeah. It's just like so. Wait till I get into a
It's
battle.
like
Like
an
see how there's like
isometric-
squares.
Oh, that's so fun. Is
Sounds
it like
Bullseye.
tacticsy?
Yeah, it's completely tacticsy.
Oh,
Like, and
that's
each
so
character
fun.
has like different skill trees, and you have to like be aware of the different skill trees of different characters. Like, there's just so much meta knowledge that goes into being good at the game.
Wow.
And then there's that, and then there's this whole like political system
Holy
to the like social aspect, and it was just like there's just so many permutations of this simple system that can possibly show up in a single encounter. Like the shot that we're seeing right now is one class with 4 different specializations of elements, and their playstyle is completely different. So there's 12 times 4, and then everybody's gonna try and find some way to screw you over. And it's
It's
like,
amazing.
Wow.
yeah,
That
like,
is so neat.
and I wonder if this sort of trope of permutations, like, because you're saying that like 10 players going at once is more interesting.
Yeah,
4
I
players.
never play vanilla Left 4 Dead 2, like,
Yeah.
ever.
It's like almost like once you're good at something, you can kind of like get to the next level of it, which is just so absurdly complicated that mastering it is nigh impossible. And then that's where it becomes like the time sink of the ages.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's my spiel about
So
Wakfu.
this game, this community isn't like super. It's a little more obscure. This game.
Yeah, it's definitely more obscure. I don't even know how I found it. I actually played the original version of this was called Dofu, which I think still exists. But yeah, it's the same premise essentially. This is just like the new version of the game.
And it's not on Steam. It's like its own kind of thing.
I actually have no idea. I haven't played it in like 5 years, but I don't think it's on Steam. I think it's like its own entity. Like
Okay.
it's not like World. It's like, is World of Warcraft on Steam? I have no idea.
No.
But it's like that, where it's like it's its own thing, and they
Right.
have their own like money system in the website. You know, it
Right.
just does its own
Okay.
thing. It's like MapleStory or something like that.
Right.
I was,
right.
you know what? I was gonna bring up MapleStory. Did anyone else play MapleStory?
No,
growing
I
up?
still
Right.
get ads to this day. I get so many
You have to
MapleStory
submit.
ads.
You have to submit. But I had growing up, I played MapleStory a lot, and there was this, like you mentioned, the cool like shop mechanic and like social kind of aspects of the game.
Yeah.
And you can go on adventures. This all sounds really cheesy, but you can go like leave the hometown, go do all this cool stuff, and it's really simple. It's like just side scroller.
Yeah.
Really grindy at times, unfortunately.
Which
but
is what got me out of it in the end.
Yeah.
So.
it's got a really cool. I'll kind of pull it up here, but
Yeah.
it's got a really nice art style, and it's interesting now that I bring that up. Some games I will play solely because of the art style. MapleStory is one of those games where the reason I started playing it was specifically the art style. The gameplay happened to also be good,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's cute.
Is it all 2D? That's how oblivious I am.
they
Yeah,
have
it
a new
is.
they have a new version now.
Oh god, yeah.
I don't know what MapleStory 2?
MapleStory 2, yes.
That's the one that I did the ads for. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's a 3D voxel. It's like the same.
Yeah. But now
I don't
you
know
can,
too much about it.
like before in the original, like the character customization system was bananas,
Yeah.
and
for, like,
now you can make your own clothes. Like they'll give you like a template.
in the 3D.
Yeah, the 3D one, like, and they'll give you like a UV map of like these are the clothes that these are, and you can just paint your own stuff.
Oh wow, that
That's
taps
amazing.
into like an Animal Crossing part of me. That, like
It's been sleeping
Yeah.
until today.
sounds very compelling.
I like the idea of like the game where when you see it, it looks simple and it looks like it wouldn't be complex, but there's this whole underlying systems
Yes.
and mechanics and shops and different kind of things. Yeah. But I wanted to kind of also talk about, is there an example of a AAA game that you feel accomplishes some of the more obscure genres of indie games, like narrative, stories, character development? I don't know if you, Matt, have any examples of
I'm just thinking of Portal.
Portal?
Because Portal was a big studio that had a phenomenal engine, and they're like, we're going to do something small and weird and just do it phenomenally.
Right, because and that's a good example because it's not just the small studios that can accomplish those things. I had a good experience with my friend. We would play through the co-op version of the game, and it's not just like a shoehorned in co-op version. It like feels unique and different.
And you're still friends after playing Portal
Yeah.
Co-op. Just checking. 'Cause it's been hard for me to do that.
I'll just play Monopoly. Just call it over.
So do you have like any examples, Julian, of games that are like more AAA or well-known games that you feel accomplish some of the things you like about the indie games?
I guess I feel like I approach the AAA and the indie games differently. I guess in just full disclosure, I'm like pretty recent to a lot of modern day AAA games just because like I had a Sega Dreamcast when I was in high school, and then just like because of life, I guess I never ended up buying like another major system until like the Switch just a couple months ago. Yeah, so like, and then I like have just been like playing indie games just because that's like the amount of byte space I've been able to like get into.
I would agree with that. I don't have too much time to play. I don't play as much games as I used to. It was to the point where a lot of times my brother would, sort of comment like, "Oh, you play games too much. You play games too much," and my dad would be like, "Oh, you're always playing games. You need to be working. You need to do this. You need to accomplish things." And I progressively got to the point where it's like I'm not actually playing games anymore. I'm like too busy doing things.
Such a
So I
adulthood,
can-
maybe.
Yeah, you definitely relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone's talking about like these huge like worlds. It's like I know I'm highly susceptible to like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, all these things. I've been like chaining myself away because I'm like know that if I were to go in, I'd like no one would ever see me again. But like and I know this isn't like an obscure example by any means, but like even Breath of the Wild is like my latest like. I was like, okay, that one I'll like bite, and I've been like restraining myself this whole time. And it was just like sploosh, like deep, like month of February of my life, completely dedicated to Legend of Zelda.
Oh, man.
And even using that example, I guess like there are like I feel like that game does a good job of like bringing out the kind of like I don't know those like niche elements of indie games, storytelling, or like there's a lot of like weird little pockets in that game that I appreciate. Even like I remember talking with Matt one day at the Yellow Dog Tavern that we meet up for the indie game night every Tuesday of the month, listeners, or last Tuesday of the month. Anyway, and I was like, we were talking, and Matt was like, "Oh, did you build a house yet?" I was like, "Wait, that's a thing you can do."
Wait, that's a thing you can do?
That's a thing you can
None
do.
of you have built the house?
I
You can have a house.
I haven't played that game. I don't
You know, I
have.
never
so
got
it's
to that
one of
point.
those-
Anyway,
You can build
You
stuff in
can
that
buy
game?
a house, and then apparently you can do stuff in the house.
Oh.
anyway, so I feel like
really nice.
for all, for all like the little like niche, I like indie games for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons I like indie games is because of all those like little like touches that like a person like a big studio might not validate all this like nuance,
Right.
but like Nintendo in this case has like taken the time to like let you do this weird obscure thing that like doesn't play into the game at all, absolutely bears no consequence, and it doesn't like guide you to it. It's just like if you find it, oh, here's like this weird little like funnel into this new chapter that you could have totally missed.
Yeah, that kind of feeds into the one that I had on my mind, which I think maybe doesn't quite classify totally as AAA, probably closer to AA, but there's a studio called Clay Entertainment, and they create like super polished titles, but they're not your Overwatch of the world, right? They're definitely smaller in scale, but they have a game called Don't Starve that has sold incredibly well, and it's a survival game. But what I like about it is it has kind of like an aesthetic and a soundscape that really feels very deeply indie, and it rewards experimentation and suffering in a way that I feel like very few games do. And they really lean into like the zaniness of this world that they've created, and they let the player try ridiculous things. Like, do you want to, like, as you're trying to survive out in this weird world where you don't know what's happening, do you want to try and cook the beefalo poops that you just found? You can try that. You can try to cook them if you want to. And it lets you do kind of like weird and strange things that you, I think, typically see cut out of a lot of, more mainstream experiences. And it feels, I think really indie in that regard. But despite their, kind of AA, getting closer to AAA status as a studio, Don't Starve has sold ridiculously well. Yeah,
And they're a Canadian studio, I believe. They're in Toronto.
Are they?
Are they
think.
Clay? Oh.
I
think so.
Don't know.
I know.
I didn't know that.
I know we had, or not we, but Dylan or New Midi Manitoba or someone had reached out to Clay to be a presenter at one of the past jams. I think it, due to like scheduling, it never kind of works out, or I don't really know, but I know we've definitely, that's been on the list.
Yeah. Jamie Chang is the guy that kind of like runs the show there, and he's just he's an incredible game designer, and like everything he makes really taps into this like part of my brain that obsesses over details and repetition and doing things until you can master them and get them right. And so it's like the games that I've sunk the most hours in are either games that I can get lost in a beautiful, charming fantasy world, a la Animal Crossing or The Sims, where I can build mansions and live in them, or they're like punishing roguelikes or survival games where it's like I die a million times and I love every minute of it. And Don't Starve definitely falls into that category.
My expansion on the like mastery thing. I've been playing a lot of Into the Breach lately.
Oh, nice.
Which, like, my, like, neurotic, like, mastery thing is, like, make every move count.
Right.
So the idea of, the game is that, like, you only got these 3 units, and you have to, like, do all these things managing only 3 people, and, like, you only have a number of turns. But, like, the turn-based strategy where it's, like, the answer is in front of you. And it's, like, it's up to you.
You just gotta be clever enough to figure it out.
I've
Yeah.
never seen this before.
It's super cool. It's from Subset Games, who made FTL, which I'm also a huge fan of. And it's like that mastery of, like, make everything count, and if you mess up, it's on you, and, like, you die a lot, and you want to keep doing it because you're like, oh, I messed up. It wasn't the system that, so
Dark Souls type.
Yeah, exactly. You have total ownership over your successes, which feels amazing, and also conversely total ownership over your failures, and it just feels real bad.
Exactly. No, I totally sympathize with what you said, Albert. It was like, give me either, like, a world that I'm just gonna get invested in, or, like, give me some sort of, like, nuance. Super Meat Boy was another, like, one of my...
Totally. Well, and it's funny that you were mentioning Breath of the Wild earlier in terms of stuff you've sunk many hours into. I was gonna bring it up, and I was just like, it's so obvious that, that I would sink a lot of time into it. But it's interesting that we're talking about this idea of permutations and mastery of a specific system, and those two feeding really well into one another, because I feel like Breath of the Wild offers both of what Julian and I like, which is a world you can get lost in, and also it's pretty difficult at times, and it will kick your butt, and it doesn't care, and you will fail a lot until you learn kind of the rules of this world and how to be smart within it. It's interesting that it offers both. I've sunk I haven't actually tallied the total hours because I couldn't wait until I got a Switch, so I initially started playing the game on the Wii U, and I logged 100+ hours on the Wii U version. Then I got a Switch and then logged 150 hours, I think, on the Switch. I've definitely spent a lot of time in it. Yeah, I haven't played it in a really long time. I miss it. And it's one of those things you were talking about, like, chaining yourself back from certain experiences, because you know how bad it's going to be. And I think, like, right now, with stuff I've got going on in my life, I'm like, I cannot turn on Breath of the Wild.
That kind of leads me into a game that you had put on the server that had sent out previously, Majora's Mask. I wanted to bring that up.
I saw your art.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I feel like that's one of those games where even if you don't put it on your top 5 list, it's in your, like, list of visible games.
Never played it.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
goodness gracious. Everyone here has played it with the exception of Rebecca?
I played it at a friend's place over an afternoon and haven't finished it or anything like that.
I got to a spot in the game, and then I couldn't get past that spot, so I stopped playing it. But I saw enough of it that I can talk
That's
about
fun. Okay, so maybe my perception is a little skewed. What do you like about that game, and how does it relate? Is there any kind of parallels to the newest iteration of that franchise through Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, what really drew me in. So it was for those who don't know, Majora's Mask was basically Zelda Ocarina of Time with, like, almost the same assets, like a few new ones and then a smaller world, and it focused more on the people of the world. And the whole game happens on a 3-day cycle that repeats, and you can go back to the beginning at any time. And so you can learn the routines of this town. Like, I knew exactly where the mailman would be at every point in the day if I needed to interrupt him. And what drew me in is this idea of a little world that you can master it. Like, the people in the town are extremely important, and it's like opening up a grandfather clock and, like, changing the knobs to see what happens. Is how this game feels.
This is the one where the moon falls, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end of the 3 days.
They're really scary. They're
I
bad
was pretty
hits.
scared of it
It's
for a long
a
time.
terrifying game.
Yeah, like, I'm pushing
Best face.
30 and I'm still afraid. From that one time I played in a friend's
Cool
place.
video you just pulled up. That was really cool.
I don't know what that was. I think that was like a fan made
I think
one.
it is very well done.
Well, I also think of this game as, like, one of, like, the earliest instances that I can remember where, like, a beloved, like, institutional franchise, like, took this massive leap of being like, yo, everything you thought we're going to get super dark. And like, you know, it's like there was mixed reception. It was like a chance. And like, I don't know, look at that moon. I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of those things where people were like, whoa, this isn't like, where's our canon? And like,
yeah.
You know,
it's so funny how,
appreciate
you know, at the time there was this like, oh, this game is really leaning into like some scarier, darker themes and this maturity and how will it go, and some people didn't like it and some people really did. But now, in like, you know, the annals of history, like it's so highly regarded as one of the best games of all time. And it's funny, like you were mentioning something about Kingdom Hearts earlier, and I remember like the discussion, the discourse leading up to like the release of Kingdom Hearts. Everyone was like, Disney and Final Fantasy characters. What? This is so ridiculous.
So weird.
And people were like really like naysaying it so intensely, and it went on to be like just this enormous franchise that's
Juggernaut.
still going to this day. Like it's funny how people, you know, were so cautiously regarding it back then and how important they are now.
Matt, have you played the 3DS version of this game?
No, I heard they fixed some of the bad design decisions they had made. Like you have more fine game control of like where you go in time, so you don't have to just like watch your clock for half an hour.
I had a really weird moment when I was playing the 3DS version. I remember the N60, like the original version, being this like saga where it took me time and energy and investment to finish it. When I played the 3DS version, I like beat the game and I was like, I remember the end boss being way harder. I swear.
I didn't even beat the end boss. That's how tough it was.
Yeah, and I remember playing. The saga was the same. Like it took the same amount of investment. I just remember the end boss being significantly harder. And in the 3DS version, I like beat it, and it like this is gonna sound really wrong, but it almost ruined the entire experience for me. Like
Don't revisit your childhood.
Is the moral
Just don't do it. Just leave it there.
I had played the entire thing and I was like, oh, final boss. And I beat him in like 2 seconds. And I was like,
no!
like, I don't know. It's like, it felt really weird. And I was not satisfied with, like, that moment had more, like, for lack of a better phrase, ruined the entire experience for me. I don't know. That was just a weird thing that stood out to me. So I was hoping like you had the same, that you had played the 3DS version.
I can't now. Now that I know this.
I had kind of a similar instance where I was like obsessed with the Mega Man games as a kid, and this is my like music tie-in. I thought the music in all the Mega Man games is top notch and is such a big influence on my life to this day. Anyway, so I would like play these games and I would die all the time. I would just like to get the powers. And anyone not familiar with the Mega Man games, you're a little robot with a little piston, mega blaster, pew pew pew, and then there's 8 levels with a robot master. At the end of it, you beat the master and you gain the power. So you accumulate these different styles of defeating people. Anyway, you get good, and then So then I just like acquiring all the powers, and then after you get the powers, you like have to beat Dr. Wily, which is just like another 5 levels, but you don't get powers at the end of them. So it's like, why would I play these levels where I don't get stronger? Anyway, and they were way harder. So my childhood was like dying and losing. And then finally the anniversary editions came out, and I played them again as like I was in grade 12 or something, and I like just like pow 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 went through all of these things. I was like, what? They're easy, and now I feel like, I don't know, I have closure in my life, or like something is like, I don't know if I was like a little disappointed, kind of like Madonna saying, like this whole time it was like actually not that hard, or like you're telling me that the like ruler, like who's the person who's dominating the universe, can be beaten by like a, I don't know, 17-year-old.
I recently had a situation like that with the Simpsons arcade game.
Oh wow, you
man.
Okay, all you need is money.
Quarters.
If you have a job, that game is no longer fun.
That's so funny.
That's really interesting.
So like when I was down in San Francisco, we were at this arcade bar, which first of all is an incredible concept. And in it they had the Simpsons arcade game.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, yes, let's play this. And so it was 4 adults with jobs. And we just spent the whole time like, you play, and then you lose your lives because the game is impossible, and you put another quarter in so you don't die. And this went on for like half an hour, and we beat the game. Like, end to end, beat the Simpsons arcade game, which I thought was like mythological. Like, that doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we're like, we're all like $20 poor, and we're like, but there was no challenge. Because like that was the stress, was like, it's you versus how many quarters you have, and only your skill and like how often you can avoid enemies and like just shepherd your friends towards the enemies is like your only litmus test for success. Because technically you don't ever have to die, like, you just keep putting quarters in the machine. And like, as an adult, I was like, oh, this was different.
I can't say I've experienced this, like, once you're older and you replay something, this mastery of it, and like, oh, that was so much easier than I had anticipated. It has been the reverse for me. So I have like the mini SNES that came out, and I was playing Donkey Kong Country on it, which I played so much of when I was a kid at a friend's place. And I remember being bad at it when I was a kid, but also I was a child.
Yeah.
And so one would think that, it was just because I was a kid. I can barely play that game now. Like, I don't know if the muscles in my hands are like degenerating or what, but I cannot get through Donkey Kong Country. I'm so bad at it. And it's just really interesting to be like, I was playing this when I was like little. Like, I was a kid. Like, how was I? And I got way further when I was a kid than I am now. So yeah, I have not mastered my old childhood game.
I wanted to ask Matt you a question about some of the. So clearly you're into video games. You have a podcast where you talk about board games. Board games.
Yeah.
Is there a board game, video game kind of hybrid that you're a fan of?
Oh man! Well, our most recent podcast, we talked about 80s electric board games.
What?
Where one has this tower with like non-LED lights in it, where it like has gear grinding sounds, and it keeps track of what monsters and stuff you encounter by like lighting them up.
Oh my gosh,
And this
that
is a
sounds
physical.
amazing.
It's a
game?
physical, like,
Whoa.
it's a piece of electronics. This came out before the Commodore 64. It's amazing that it exists. But lately, more board games have apps to go with them, or
Really?
a website you visit. I was playing one about murder in Hong Kong. You're detectives. You're not murderers. Murder games. Just kidding.
Jokes.
And you have to find fingerprints and then type those codes into a computer, into like a website. You literally go to a website and make an account and log in, and you can keep track of information between games because it's in your online account. And I'm conflicted.
Is this a video game? Is this a board game?
Yeah, like I'm not, like, something to me that's so charming about board games is it's one part of my life that isn't staring at a glowing rectangle.
Right.
It's something physical. You have tactile pieces. The way those pieces fit together informs the mechanics of the game. You have, like, it's all physical. You can stack cards and that means something for the game. Whereas this kind of puts me back on a computer, and I don't really want that.
Probably like, kids like computers, let's do computers.
Well, there are lots of nice things for the developer. Like, you can fix typos because you just fix your website.
Right.
Or you could have updates so that the game's different, but you didn't have to ship anyone anything, so that's cheaper for you.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best executed board game that has been translated into a video game?
Oh, well, see, that's a different podcast we had. So there's like, you can play Ticket to Ride.
Watch the podcast.
You can play Ticket to Ride as a board game with your friends, or you can play Ticket to Ride on a phone where you pass it to your friend when it's their turn.
Okay.
And Ticket to Ride works really well. And they have computers, so you can get better at the game when your friends aren't around, so that you can beat them. Jan is really good at the game, and we maybe can't play it anymore.
It's like the exact,
It's okay, I don't play how the computers play, so it's all good.
it's like the exact opposite direction of like escape rooms. Which are like the like instead of going towards the digital, like you take like what is normally a video game, like escape room video game, and you're like, now it's real. You're in the room. Which I'm surprised they didn't do that sooner.
Yeah.
Because when you're in it, it feels like you're playing a video game. Like the clues are so video game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah, because like one time I actually went in with my parents and some of my friends. We were like we were in Gimli, and they had an escape room there for like a very short while.
Wow.
And it was funny because the difference in skill between, you know, there was the youngins who play video games, youngins who don't, and then these, you know, like 40, 50-year-olds who've not played video games beyond like Tetris. And like the adults just didn't get it. They're like, I don't understand the leap of logic you took between this and this. And like, well, this made me think about like shapes and colors, and then I thought, where do I see shapes and colors, you know? And you have to like kind of almost see the solution before you can look for the next step, which is very video gamey.
I feel like this ties into like our earlier comment on conversation, how we were talking about like game mechanics, and I guess how like game mechanics haven't really changed. I feel like there's a lot of like institutionalized video gaminess where it's just like, oh, push B to jump, or like this attacks, or like if your sword makes a different sound against the wall, you should bump. You know, just like those types of like tropesy things that like a lot of modern day, well, I think it's really cool seeing it in like the interactive world, or like or like not
in like life.
In life, like the way the traffic light beeps is like, oh, that's a video game would do that, or I think that's really cool. But it's also interesting that like gap for people who don't play games, it's just like it's a big deal. And,
It's interesting to think about things in you know, trying to frame ourselves like those people you were doing the escape room with, in like how they were excluded sort of in the experience as a result of their not having that kind of like that vernacular, that like video game language. And it's like thinking about how now people who create, you know, theoretically anything, but people who are creating, you know, escape rooms maybe skew younger, and maybe they have, you know, they've played a lot of games, and maybe they don't even realize that they're consciously designing for people like them who have solved puzzles via video games rather than the in real life counterpart.
It's kind of like the same reason why IQ tests are invalid, because like they were based off of an understanding from like, you know, like a white Anglo-Saxon perspective. Like they design the games like I've seen statistics where like African American youth in like the 50s did terribly at these IQ tests because they were simply asking questions about day-to-day life that is common in like white suburbia.
Right.
Like there was sometimes like they'd talk about like a sofa, and like they would call it a Chesterfield in like other society, like in other like parts of society, right?
Like, what is that?
And they're like, I don't know. And so they would score low, and they'd be like, well, you're just dumb, I guess. It's like, no, it's like the test was the one that was biased.
Yeah, it feels as though there are a lot of aspects of society that even now in 2018 are really like lagging behind due to, you know, being designed by people who traditionally hold power, right, in society. And even like, I had a fairly recent experience, you know, earlier this spring, where I was helping someone I care about at the hospital. And at the hospital, there are a lot of these systems in North America that are designed around asking patients about their pain, using a scale, which isn't super gamey, but it's one of these things where they'll have someone, you know, either refer to a scale like in 1 to 10, or point to, you know, images on a chart, like how,
sad face.
like how much pain are you
Seen that
feeling
thing.
right now? And I see a lot of the numbers used, like on a scale of, you know, 0 to 10, how intense would you say the pain is that you're feeling right now? And it's really frustrating because it really does a disservice to people who English is not their first language, or they moved here fairly recently, because this concept of using numbers to value something as, you know, personal and abstract, exactly, as pain, is a really weird concept to a lot of people. And they end up, in my experience with the person I was with, getting a poorer degree of care and understanding from healthcare professionals, because they can't quite wrap their minds around like, what do you mean my pain wants, like, and they can't even quantify that. So it's interesting that in multiple sort of ways there are these systems that are designed from, you know, a pretty narrow perspective, if we're looking at it that way, and it excludes others, right? And that can include video game knowledge and other ones.
Interesting.
Interesting. It's interesting.
My mind has been expanded.
So I think there's a few other sort of follow-up questions that I wanted to pose. When I sent out the survey, I was asked about genres. Are there an example of a genre that you don't like, that there's a game like for example, I'm not particularly into puzzle games, but there's this one puzzle game that I really resonate with. So I don't know if there's an example of a game that's outside your preferred genre that you really relate to or you really enjoy. Matt, I don't know if you have.
For me, it's Overwatch.
Someone just comes back.
So you're not.
It's a first-person shooter, which I like avoid.
Okay.
Because Halo was the best one, and nothing lives up to it. No, I just don't enjoy first-person shooters. But this game has so much variety. Like you can play a melee character, you can play a character where, as long as someone's standing within 90 degrees in front of you, you're attacking them if you hit attack. And your main job is spatial awareness, so you jump around. It's
really
so
cool, actually.
It like broke it enough for me to get involved. So for me, it's Overwatch.
Yeah, for myself, I'm not particular to puzzle games, but there was this one that you can't even get anymore, and I don't even know that there's any legitimate alternative for it, but it was a 3D Tetris where the blocks were 3D, and I played the heck out of that game, and it didn't even break the genre for me, but for whatever reason, I like loved that game, but I hated Tetris. But I like 3D Tetris. I don't know. It's just like
that's really funny, actually.
Yeah, it's harder, arguably, but I don't know. It was more engaging. I think I liked that it was more like I could flip it around and look at it from different angles instead of just one plane that was just flat. And maybe I perceived it as being boring. I have no idea why I like that game. But I don't know do you have examples of genres that...
Okay, so it's not quite a genre, but you said something in a message the other day, because I asked you what your favorite game was.
I forget what I said.
You said, I really enjoy like playing just the Ludum Dare games that people put out.
Oh, yeah.
Because like, what I interpreted
the
was...
lawnmower game.
Yeah, exactly. I interpreted that to mean was like, I enjoy the process of the social interaction of person makes game, I play game, I then tell them about experience, and then they kind of like it's a giving back almost. And it kind of made me realize that like I actually haven't played a video game end to end in a little over a year, because every time I sit down to like I have like an hour to spare, like I'm like I got an hour, what do I want to do? I'd like to make a game now. And so like it's not quite a genre, but it's almost like the act of making a game in that social environment of like game devs as a whole has replaced the need to play video games in my life almost, because I get like all the things I want. I get the social, I get the story, it's my life, creativity obviously, competition, because you know you look around what everybody else is doing, you know. Like, it's almost like this game that is so incredibly meta that it almost works. And like that's where I'm at in my life right now. Like that making games is my favorite game. And I sink all of my time into it.
You're like, well, I logged 8 hours into the making game yesterday.
Yeah. Just today. Like, I'm a degenerate. And then you don't feel bad either. Because you're like, I was productive today. I made stuff.
Have you heard about this game called Unity? It's pretty obscure. I spent so much time into Unity. Mine is kind of like an old school reference. Okay, so two genres I'm traditionally despise. Sorry. And I'm bad at first-person shooters. I got decimated at Halo so much that I don't even want to talk about it. And then fighting games, I'm like really bad at like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, whatever. Like that was like the era of my life when it was like Super Nintendo or whatever. But then Super Smash Bros. Came out, and I was just like another instance of just like straight to the heart. And then I'm just like need to master this, and I'm still like. And I've like gone, speaking of social situations, I feel like everywhere I've been, there's been like a Smash Bros. Compadre where it's just like you, and then it's like, it's something in their eye where it's just like, we're going to be friends.
You look close,
and
then you're you look at the closest, like the logo is in there.
Yeah, exactly. You have it too. And then like, just like friendships of like stranger, I've been in like cities where I don't know a soul, but it's like, Smash Bros, okay. And then like, you're like best friends afterwards, and it's like, been like I don't play a lot of multiplayer games. I'm usually like a lone wolf, but that's a situation where it's just like I find I've had the most social experiences, like yelling at people or like throwing controllers, and like friendships formed and broken over that game.
So I guess in the interest of time here, I just had one kind of last question, because I know I don't want to eat up everyone's time all night. Is there any games that you're looking forward to, whether it's an indie game or a AAA game, that hasn't been released yet?
I mean, mine is very obvious. The most recent Nintendo Direct included a hint that there will be an Animal Crossing game coming to Switch in 2019. So, I've been waiting. How long has it been since a mainline Animal Crossing game has come out? I think we're after the 5-year mark now. It's been a long time.
Really?
So Animal Crossing 2019 is my thing. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to. I don't play a lot of AAA titles anymore. I don't. Partly because they cost almost $100 now. I remember when they cost $60.
Yeah.
And it's just that. It seems absurd to me. I will not play any of these games because they are so expensive now. But Red Dead Redemption 2, I think that's what it's called, right? But I don't have a console. I don't have anything to play it on.
Aww.
And the PC version doesn't come out till 5 months after, and that's a game that I want to get right away, but even if I had a console, I don't know if I could justify paying $80-$90 with tax once it's all done.
AAA struggle.
Yeah, right? That's why I play indie games.
Yeah, they're
partially.
Mostly.
Mostly free, and I feel like I get these AAA titles like GTAs and Red Deads are more of a time sink. But I feel like I get more out of indie games in terms of emotion, characters, narrative, far more than I do with AAA titles. But yeah, is there any games that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, well, next on my list is actually Wander Song. I feel like it's
same.
I know. I have no reason. It's just time. It's I
Yeah.
don't have time to get invested.
Yeah.
There's a backlog of indie games on the Switch that I'm stoked to check out as well. So I feel like I'm gonna go more indie lately. But the next AAA thing is Smash Bros. I'm really excited for Smash Bros. I don't. Yeah, that's and I don't know. To your point, the reason it was a financial reason that I didn't buy consoles this whole way. It's a huge money investment.
Yeah.
You to buy the console and then you're buying $100 games each time, and each one is a massive. For me, I feel the pressure is I want to get every single drop out of this thing just because A, people have invested so much energy to make this cool experience, and B, I've invested money into it. So, and A, I have limited time, so how do you pick and choose, and how deep do you go versus how broad?
Right.
So it's kind of a weird thing for consoles and AAA games now, especially. I don't know. I'm not informed enough about this to talk about it, but all these labor things that are talking about, it's people getting paid or not getting paid for their work versus the price of games versus it's a complicated thing.
It's hard being on the side of I was in the game industry, but on the communication side, and seeing how things are done, but not actively participating in them for a long time, and then now more on the actual development side of things, and it's hard now making purchasing decisions about games, because especially with indies, and especially with smaller titles, and the indies and double A's of the world. If there's a game that I am really impressed by, or a developer that I'm really interested in, I will try to buy that game day one, if not week one, because I know that's their most important window for initial sales, and pre-orders and stuff are also really important. Whereas with certain AAA companies, I feel more comfortable I'm gonna wait a year or two for the edition that comes with all the DLC and stuff, because you don't have infinite money, and you have to make those decisions as tough as they seem, because of course AAA developers are equally as deserving as great week one sales, but it's not the same level of competition that indies are facing. So yeah, I find myself thinking a lot harder about these decisions now, trying to figure out what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, we also might just not be the target demographic for AAA games.
Totally.
People who have not enough time to spend 80 hours
Right.
end to end finishing an epic saga. As great as it might be,
Yeah.
it's like I'm really looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077. Like
Yeah,
I
I'm looking
love
forward
The
to
Witcher
that too,
3.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I follow all the new stuff that comes up, and I'm like, oh, this looks so cool. I know I'm not gonna have a chance to play it probably. Like I'm just not. Like there's no way I'm gonna have. Like I played The Witcher 3 because I was unemployed. I played it for a solid month, and I finished it, and I was like, that was the best ever. Now I work 2 jobs and I have a husband. Like there's no way that I'm ever gonna get to play this game that I so want to.
Yeah.
A lot of times what I do in those situations is I'll just watch Let's Plays, and that like,
Yeah.
I don't have to
That
buy
doesn't
the
do
game.
it for me. Oh.
It kind of does do it for me, which is, I guess, works in my favor. I can't remember the game, but pretty much any the major AAA titles that come out, I just watch a Let's Player and then I get my fix. It's kind of like smelling food without eating it.
That just makes it so much worse for me. I'm like, I know I've smelt it.
Yeah.
Now, that happened to me with Detroit Become Human, also by Quantic Dream, where I was like, oh, I can not play this game. I'll survive. And then I watched the Game Grumps play it for a day. I'm like, I need it.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. Like, I have to go on a media ban for myself.
Oh, okay, that's
I
interesting.
have to do an embargo for my brain for taking in content about games. Like with the recent Insomniac Spider-Man release,
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I can't watch stuff about it. I can't read stuff about it because
yeah.
it makes me want it really bad.
Yeah.
Do you have any games you're looking forward to, Matt?
I can think of nothing. There's a bunch of tiny developers I follow on Twitter, and I'm rooting for them. I'm looking for their games to come out. But for me, most of the
It
games
doesn't have to just be AAA. It could be-
well, most of the games I'm looking forward to playing are in my Steam library,
Yeah.
untouched so far.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
so-
And so I've been playing them. I'm playing Hollow Knight.
Oh
and
yeah.
when you start playing, it has some cinematics, but then you start running around, and then it shows the credits that come in softly. Oh, it's so neat.
You know what?
Lots of little tricky stuff.
Messes me up is Hollow Knight still feels new. I'm like, did that just come
I
out
know.
yesterday? Oh god.
I'm really excited to play. I'm like, oh, Hyperlight Drifter is on the.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, totally. And I'm like, Transistor, I really like. Super Giant Games Bastion is one of my super was the game that got me into indie games with the narrator and everything. So
Aw.
good.
Oh, the
Yeah.
dynamic narrator.
Oh, I thought that was
Matt is
so
touching
cool.
his face as,
Yeah.
as he describes the dynamic narrator. He's
Yeah.
squishing his beard.
So wonderful.
Yeah, but even a game like Hollow Knight was I don't know what level of studio would this be double indie or I don't know.
I confess, I really know nothing about.
I don't
Team
really
Cherry.
know, sadly, but it's a game that seems, I don't know. For me, it just starts out so small and then it gets so big, and I thought that it was going to end multiple hours and sessions ago, but I'm like, oh, now you can do this, now you can do this. I'm like, this game on its own, it's not AAA, and it's already I've invested, I don't know, 20 hours into it.
Totally.
So it's just
yeah.
where's the time?
Yeah.
There's so much cool stuff in the world. That's what it goes down to.
It's tough out there.
That's the ultimate sad thing about growing up is I remember as a kid being like, when I'm a grown up, I'm gonna play as many video games as I want all the time. And it's that's not life though.
You will never play as many video games as you will right now, child.
Yep.
Yeah, I find that I'm not playing as many video games as I am wanting to. Not as I'm wanting to, but I just don't have time for it. I if I had the time, I would.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm focusing on my career and community stuff. So if there's a time where I'd have free time, I might choose to try and plan an event or something.
Right.
Rather than investing time in something that I'm not getting a
Productive.
return on or productive. That's a better word.
Yeah.
Being productive on. So
Well, it's interesting that you phrase it that way, or you bring it up that it's, you're like, I gotta focus on career stuff, or I gotta do community stuff, because for me lately, and I wonder if any of you feel the same way, sometimes, so you finish work, and then you go to figure out what you're gonna do with your free time, what little of it that you have. Playing games, especially now indie games, for me feels like work, because I can't turn off that part of your brain that's analyzing like how they like do their story and how they build their levels and you know, like, oh, that's interesting, that mechanic, I wonder how they figured that out. And it's like it doesn't feel like as relaxing any longer, I find.
I actually find that it increases my enjoyment of a game.
Really?
I think I'm with you on that one.
It makes me tired. I just get tired. I'm like, I just gotta like leave the world of video games for a bit.
I definitely understand where you're coming from, but I find my perspective is to be like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I know how this works, and like I know how I would do this. But
I relate to your point with music when it comes to music, because like especially in music school, they're like they ask you to like be able to identify chords and like transcribe things, so you're like. Every time you hear a song, your like brain goes on like, oh, it's that chord, and I like find it very like cerebrally taxing to have music on, because it's just like I'm just programmed to be trying to figure it out, and it's like I can't really turn it off. So it's like I actually don't like casually listen. I don't have music playing on in the background because I find it distracting, and if I'm going to listen to music, I want it to be like a really dedicated experience, like playing a game or like reading a book or something like that.
Totally.
Because I just know it's going to capture my attention. I won't be able to carry on a conversation.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Maybe one day you'll reach the point where you just become so good at it. It just happens automatically, and then you can enjoy music again.
Yeah, exactly.
Come out the other side.
And also to your point, Rebecca, it's like music is my video game. It's like Pro Tools Logic, you know, it's like the keyboard. The keyboard is my controller. Yeah, but anyway, it's just like, you know, there's enough knobs on those graphic user interfaces that, you know,
art is the best game ever.
Well, yeah, totally. You know, real life. Who needs?
Yeah, the graphics are great.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I feel like I could honestly like talk forever and ever, and I hope it like turns out. I've never done this before, and generally I try and facilitate easier listening. I don't know the like dynamic is a lot different when you're talking to someone one-on-one. It's a lot easier to facilitate that. So I'm really curious to see how it turned out. But I mean, my perspective on like this is, one, I just like sharing conversation around the things that we're all passionate about. Like, that's my favorite thing in the world. So regardless of how it turns out, I appreciate everyone's time. There's so many more questions that I wanted to ask about, like, I wanted to get into BioShock, I wanted to get into all these other games, and there's plenty of opportunities down the road to do that. But I wanted to thank Matt, Rebecca, Julian, Albertine for... we're all
silent applause.
Silent clapping.
I wanted to thank you guys for your time, and I hope the people that are listening could kind of be a part of the conversation in a way, and you know, you might not have been able to contribute, but you can kind of talk at us, you know. But anyways, thank you for listening to the Interactive Indies podcast. And before we end it here, I'm just going to let's do some shout-outs. Matt?
Shout-outs. Oh, by the time you're listening to this, probably Propaganda Lemma will be announced, and you can wishlist it on Steam. Find it, do it, and then you can listen to my sweet, sweet voice on our Games Explained podcast. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts, or on YouTube, where you are Games Explained.
I think you're missing something there.
What am I missing? What am I
think you need to...
What should I talk about more?
Swap?
The Swapper? Oh, go play the Swapper. I didn't make it, but play it, please.
But he gets royalties from them.
I wish.
They're just going to see the sales spike.
Yeah, okay.
Matt is an influencer.
Thank you, Matt.
It's true.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I guess by the time you're listening to this, Proxy will still not be out. Keep an eye on it. And also, this coming year, I don't know if we have any high schooler listeners from the Winnipeg area, but I'm going to be teaching a game art and design course through New Media Manitoba in the coming year around February. You can just apply to do that. I guess the link's not up yet, but it'll be on newmediamanitoba.com. So yeah, check that out. It'll be really fun, and maybe I'll see you there.
Julian?
By the time this podcast comes out,
There we go,
I
that's
will
the thing.
also not have anything new to say. However, you can visit www.julianbutel.com and see a bunch of stuff that I've done. Most recently, go to the pechakucha.com/ Winnipeg. That's not the link, but look at the Winnipeg thing. And Pachakucha, and did a talk that's on the website, and then the work is online too.
By the time this podcast comes out, I won't have anything new to show for it. But you should follow @InfiniteAmmoDev on Twitter to get updates about what we're working on. That's Alex's professional Twitter account, and you can also follow me @LittleBlueRobot, and we'll be tweeting about Project Potato and Project other things, and maybe putting out some visual stuff sometime soon.
Great. And with that, I wanted to also thank the people that also helped make this podcast possible. Daniel Bergman is a huge part of this podcast. He does so much of the editing, and now with the video component, he's also helping with that. So I wanted to kind of shout out and make it very visible that he is a very large part of helping make this thing a reality. A lot of the equipment through Dan Blair from Bitspace Development. The mics, all the mics I'm using are through Bitspace. And also New Media Manitoba is also really great in supporting everything that I've been trying to do through this podcast. And the most important thing is the people in the community and building a stronger bond between all the different people that I've had a chance to talk to, sharing that with whoever happens to be listening, today being no different than any other episodes I've put out. So I'm probably missing something, but there we go. Thank you guys for your time, and you can tune in to the podcast, which you probably already know, interactiveindie.com. I'm not sure how else you would be listening, but it's on Google Play Music, it's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's everywhere. And you can, for whatever reason, my Twitter account is Hyperscope. And with that, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks to all the Daniels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many Dans.